Chapter 11. Kicking to review my notes, but I could feel his presence like a weight pressing down on me. Intimidating, really. With my head on my table, closer to the fire, I sat at the conference table, gripping my pen so tight, my notes. You're always staring at my notes. Eritha finished reading an article from Danger of Nighttime. All right, Jonah said, clearing his throat. Let's jump in. Ray, you had an idea for the encryption issue? I froze for half a second. I hadn't expected to go first. I nodded, sitting up straighter. Yeah, I think if we simplify the firewall layers, we can cut some of the lag. There's too much redundancy in the system. Jonah gave a slow nod. You're sure about that? I swallowed. I ran some tests. If we adjust the second layer, we could boost performance by 15%. Silence. I glanced around the table, but everyone was staring at their screens. Killian's eyes, though, they were locked on me. 15%? Jonah said. I nodded. It's possible. Killian leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. His gaze didn't waver. I half expected him to shoot the idea down. Try it, he said instead. Jonah looked over. You sure? That's a big change. Killian's eyes stayed on me. She can handle it. Heat crept up my neck. I gave a small nod, trying not to look completely shocked. I'll have the update ready by Friday. Westwood. I looked up. He stood by the door, one hand resting against the frame. You did good today, he said. My heart skipped. Oh, thanks. His gaze stayed on me for a second longer, and then he tilted his head slightly. Come out for drinks later, he said. Jonah's team is going. I blinked. It wasn't a question. His mouth curved into something between a smirk and a smile. I nodded, feeling the heat rise into my face again. Okay. Killian walked out without another word. Lisa appeared at my side, grinning. Told you, she whispered, bumping her shoulder into mine. I didn't know what I had just agreed to, but I knew one thing for sure. There was no backing out now. Chapter 12. The Rumor Mill. I could feel the stares. They weren't obvious at first, just quick glances over computer screens, whispered conversations that stopped the second I walked by. But it didn't take a genius to figure out what was happening. The moment I said yes to drinks with Killian, everything changed. It wasn't even that big of a deal. We barely talked at the bar. Jonah hogged most of Killian's attention, and I stayed in the background, nursing one drink the entire night. But that didn't stop the rumors. I dropped into my chair the next morning, pretending not to notice the girl 2 desks over, whispering behind her hand. Her eyes flicked to me, then back to the guy sitting next to her. Seriously? Lisa's voice snapped me out of it. She leaned over the divider between our desks, glaring at the girl. Could they be more obvious? I shrugged, opening my laptop. It's fine. It's not fine. Lisa crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. You didn't even do anything, and they're acting like you seduced the alpha heir at the holiday party. I snorted. I definitely didn't. Exactly. And you shouldn't have to deal with this. I waved her off. Let them talk. It's not like Killian's paying attention. Except that wasn't true. Killian was paying attention. I caught him watching me twice that day. Not in a weird way. More like he was making sure I wasn't drowning in project work. But every time he lingered, the whispers got louder. By lunch, I was ready to crawl under my desk. That's when Brielle decided to make her move. Brielle was everything I wasn't. Sharp, confident, and perfectly put together. She worked in software development, one level above me, and had made it painfully clear that Killian was on her radar. She strutted over to my desk like she owned the place, her heels clicking loudly against the floor. "So," she said, leaning down with a fake smile, "how's it feel working so closely with Killian?" I glanced up from my screen. "It's fine." She laughed softly, like I'd just told a joke. "I bet it is. Not everyone gets that kind of attention." I bet her gaze, keeping my face neutral. "I was assigned to the project, same as everyone else." "Sure." Brielle straightened, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "Just don't get too comfortable. The Voss family takes their pack bonds very seriously." I clenched my jaw. I knew exactly what she was implying. Lisa looked ready to throw her coffee at Brielle's head, but I shook my head slightly. Not worth it. Brielle walked off, and Lisa exhaled sharply. "I swear she's got fangs for you, Ray." "She's just bored," I muttered, but the knot in my stomach didn't agree. By the time the afternoon meeting rolled around, I was dreading it. Killian stood at the front of the room, going over project milestones while I tried to disappear into my seat. Brielle sat near him, asking questions she clearly already knew the answers to. I kept my head down, scribbling notes. Then it happened. Jonah brought up the new security patch, the one I pitched last week. He asked me to walk the team through it. I felt the weight of the room shift. I stood, explaining the updates as confidently as I could. But I didn't miss the eye rolls. One of the engineers whispered something to Brielle, and she covered her mouth to hide a smile. I kept talking, pretending I didn't see it. When I finished, I sat down, heart racing. Jonah nodded approvingly. "Good work, Ray. That update puts us ahead of schedule." Brielle's friend smirked. "Sure helps to have connections." The room went silent. My stomach dropped. Killian's gaze snapped to the guy. "If you think that's how we run things here," he said calmly, "you're free to leave the project." The guy's face paled. No, I didn't mean..." "Good," Killian said, his eyes cold, "because Ray earned that spot." Nobody said anything after that. I kept my eyes on the table, heat burning in my cheeks. When the meeting ended, Lisa nudged me. "Guess he is paying attention," I sighed. "Yeah, that's the problem." I stared at the blinking cursor on my screen. The lines of code blurred together, and I wasn't even sure what I'd been working on for the past hour. My mind kept circling back to the meeting. And Killian. He didn't have to defend me, but he did. And now half the office thought I was his latest distraction. Lisa dropped into the chair beside me, her iced coffee nearly spilling onto my desk. "Okay, spill. You've been staring at that screen like it insulted your family." I sighed, rubbing the back of my neck. "It's nothing." Lisa gave me a look. "Ray?" I hesitated, twisting my pen between my fingers. "I just don't get him." "Killian?" I nodded. One minute, he's acting like I barely exist. The next, he's standing up for me like I'm part of his inner circle. Lisa sipped her drink, watching me carefully. Maybe you do exist to him, I scoffed. Come on, he's the future alpha. I'm just someone who happens to be in the same room half the time. I scoffed. Come on, he's the future alpha. I'm just someone who happens to be in the same room half the time. Doesn't seem like he sees it that way. I rolled my eyes. I'm not the type of girl someone like Killian notices, Lisa. You know that. She leaned in, lowering her voice. You're selling yourself short. I see the way he looks at you when you're not paying attention. And let's not forget the gala. He kissed you, remember? I shifted in my chair, trying to ignore the way my heart sped up. Yeah, and then he walked away like it was nothing. Lisa tilted her head. Maybe he's trying to figure it out too. I frowned. Figure what out? She smirked. Huh, how to get you to stop acting like he's not into you. I laughed quietly, shaking my head. I don't know. I feel like I'm getting pulled into something I didn't ask for. Lisa shrugged. Then walk away. I stayed quiet. We both knew I wasn't going to. By the time I packed up for the day, the office had mostly emptied. I slung my bag over my shoulder and headed for the elevators. My phone buzzed before I reached the door. Rooftop? Need to meet. Can you stop by the rooftop at 7? I stared at the message, rereading it twice. Lisa peeked over my shoulder, practically vibrating with excitement. Rooftop? Oh, this is getting interesting. It's just a meeting, I said, pocketing my phone. Lisa grinned. Sure it is. I didn't believe it either. Chapter 13. Weird Vibes and Anonymous Gifts. I was determined to stay calm during the meeting. Professional. Cool. Unbothered. That lasted about 5 minutes. Killian was at the head of the table, sleeves rolled up, arms crossed. Basically looking like he stepped out of a magazine ad for rich, dangerous guys who probably owned private jets. I kept my eyes glued to my laptop, typing like my life depended on it. Ray, Jonah said, nodding toward me. Walk us through the encryption bypass. I straightened up, quickly flipping to my notes. Right, so I adjusted the firewall redundancy to streamline data flow. By reducing the third layer, we cut lag by 18%. I risked a glance at Killian. His gaze was locked on me, unreadable. I ignored the way my stomach flipped. It increases security without slowing system response time. I added a patch to catch any overflow. Silence. Jonah nodded slowly. Impressive. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Lisa grinned across the table, mouthing, "Show off." Killian finally spoke. Good work, Ray. Simple. No fuss. But my brain latched onto it like a dog with a bone. Killian Voss said I did good work. Future Alpha Killian. Same guy who kissed me at the gala like it was nothing. Thanks, I said, playing it off. Inside, I was mentally high-fiving myself. I sat back down and pretended not to notice Lisa giving me a thumbs up under the table. After the meeting, I walked past Brielle in the hallway. She barely acknowledged me, which felt like a win. See, Lisa whispered, falling into step beside me. You crushed that. Barely survived, I muttered. Lisa snorted. Killian looked 2 seconds away from writing you a love letter. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, because nothing says romance like firewall redundancy. Some guys are into that nerdy stuff. I shoved her playfully. Stop. By the time I got back to my desk, I was ready to clock out and sleep for 12 hours. But something caught my eye. A small box sat on my chair, black, sleek, with no note. I frowned, holding it up. Did someone leave this? Lisa leaned over, eyes widening. Ooh, mystery gift. From your secret admirer, maybe? I stared at the box. It's probably just office supplies. Lisa shook her head. No way, it's too fancy. Open it. I peeled back the lid. Inside was a fountain pen. Smooth, silver, and way too expensive looking for someone like me. I blinked. This has to be a mistake. Lisa grinned like a lunatic. Oh, it's not. She pointed dramatically at Killian's office door. I bet it's from him. I laughed, shaking my head. Why would Killian give me a pen? Because you're a nerd, and he knows it. I stared at the pen, turning it in my hand. Killian's name wasn't on it. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Lisa might actually be right. The pen sat on my desk. Sleek. Silver. Fancy. It didn't belong here. It didn't belong to me. I twirled it between my fingers, trying not to overthink it. Maybe it was from Jonah. A thanks for not quitting kind of thing. Or maybe Killian. That thought had been living rent-free in my head all morning. I wasn't even that into pens, but here I was, typing with one hand while the other kept spinning. Like I was in some kind of office supply commercial. Staring at it won't make him confess, Lisa said from across the desk. I'm not staring at it. Lisa pointed at my screen. You haven't typed for 5 minutes. I'm thinking. You're spiraling. I opened my mouth to argue, but stopped. She wasn't wrong. The pen had officially taken over my life. I sighed and shoved it into my drawer. Out of sight, out of mind. I turned back to my laptop, cracking my knuckles. Focus ray. Just finish the firewall update. I typed furiously, rerouting the encryption layers. Easy. Fast. Killian would never know I spent half the morning daydreaming about a pen. Until I hit enter. The screen flashed red. Error codes poured down like rain. Oh, no. I stared at the mess, willing it to fix itself. It didn't. Lisa peeked over the divider, eyebrows raised. That's a lot of red. I know. What did you do? I groaned, sinking into my chair. I thought I patched the bug. Turns out I might have. Broken the entire firewall? Lisa's eyes widened. You broke the entire firewall? Lisa's eyes widened. You broke the entire firewall? I dropped to the floor. It was all a ruse. The battery didn't work. Turns out I might have broken the entire system, she said bleakly. Turns out. I'm afraid. I spent the next hour trying to undo the damage. Nothing worked. By the time the meeting rolled around, I was ready to fake my own death. Everyone shuffled into the conference room, clueless that Nova's firewall was currently more like a screen door. I kept my head down, taking a seat near the end of the table. Killian walked in, sleeves rolled up, tablet in hand. He glanced around the room, eyes briefly landing on me. I pretended to type something important. Jonah frowned. Didn't like it how? Lisa leaned in, whispering loudly. She broke the firewall. Killian's eyes locked onto me. I swear the air got heavier. You broke the firewall? He asked slowly. It's not that broken. I said. Just leaky. Leaky? Killian set his tablet down. As in, completely open? More like slightly open? Not completely open. More like slightly open? More like, I'll grab coffee. Coward. Killian stayed behind as the room emptied. I kept my gaze glued to the table, waiting for the ground to swallow me. Explain, Killian said, arms crossed. I fidgeted with my pen, not that pen. I thought if I bypassed the third layer, it would fix the lag. But I guess it bypassed everything else, too. Killian exhaled, rubbing his jaw. I know, I cut in. I'll fix it. He didn't say anything for a moment. The disappointment hung between us, heavy and uncomfortable. Finally, he shook his head. You can't cut corners like this. I need to trust you with these systems. I looked up, feeling the sting in my chest. I wasn't cutting corners. I hesitated. I wanted to get ahead, prove I could handle it. Killian's expression softened, but only slightly. You don't have to prove anything. I let out a dry laugh. You literally told the entire team I could handle this project. Because you can. I blinked, caught off guard. Killian grabbed his tablet and turned toward the door. I'm not mad, he said over his shoulder. Just fix it. And next time, stop overthinking. The door clicked shut behind him. I sank lower in my chair. Lisa popped her head in. Sue, you get fired? Or are we celebrating with donuts? I threw a pen at her. Unfortunately, not the expensive one. Chapter 14. Damage Control. As the door shut behind him, I exhaled, slumping in my chair. Lisa poked her head in a second later. Sue, how'd that go? I threw my pen at her. She ducked, laughing. That bad, huh? Huh. I didn't get fired, I muttered, rubbing my face. But I might have to fake my death if I can't fix this firewall by the end of the day. Lisa strolled in like we had all the time in the world. Relax, it's just a firewall. How hard can it be? I glared at her. You code a firewall then. She patted my shoulder. I believe in you. Great, I'll tell Killian that when the entire system collapses. Lisa grinned. Or you could just tell him you were distracted by that expensive pen sitting in your desk drawer. I shot her another glare. But she wasn't wrong. By lunch I was knee-deep in code. Error messages still flashed, but fewer now. Progress. I hunched over my keyboard, chewing on the end of a pencil. Lisa had left for food, but I stayed behind, hammering away at the firewall like my life depended on it. Because it kind of did. After another hour, something shifted. The red error box finally disappeared. The system blinked green. I froze. No way. I ran the program again. Same result. I sat back, staring at the screen in disbelief. I fixed it. For a solid minute I just stared. Then, slowly, a grin crept onto my face. AJ! I shouted, loud enough to make the guy at the next desk jump. Everything okay over there? He asked, eyeing me like I'd lost it. Oh yeah, just casually saving the entire network. I shot Lisa a text. Fixed it. I'm a genius. Her reply came back instantly. I always knew you were, but maybe don't say that out loud around Jonah. Fair point. By the time the team reconvened for the afternoon meeting, I was feeling pretty good. I'd triple-checked the firewall, and everything held up. I took my usual seat at the far end of the table, hoping to blend in. Killian walked in last, sharp eyes sweeping the room. When his gaze landed on me, I sat up a little straighter. "Let's review the patch," Jonas said. "Ray?" I cleared my throat. "Firewall's fully functional now. Lag's down to 6%. Jonah raised his eyebrows. 6? We were aiming for 10. I shrugged, keeping my tone casual. What can I say? I'm an overachiever. A few people chuckled. Even Jonah cracked a smile. Killian, though, he just watched me. "Nice work," he said, finally breaking the silence. I nodded, forcing myself to stay cool, but inside I was doing victory laps. After the meeting, I lingered by my desk, pretending to organize files while everyone filtered out. I could feel Killian's presence nearby, but I focused hard on looking busy. "Ray!" His voice came from behind me. I turned, feeling my pulse jump. "Yeah?" He stepped closer, eyes flicking to my laptop screen and then back to me. "You handled it well today." "Thanks," I said, tucking a curl behind my ear. I didn't want to burn the office down twice in 1 week. The corner of his mouth twitched. "Appreciated." For a second, I thought he'd leave it at that, but then, just as he turned to go, his hand brushed against my cheek, gently tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. The world kind of paused. Killian's fingers lingered for half a second before he pulled away, acting like nothing happened. "Good work today," he said over his shoulder, heading for his office. I stood there, frozen, blinking like an idiot. Lisa walked in right as he disappeared down the hall. She took one look at my face and smirked. What was that? I shook my head, pretending it was no big deal, but the truth? I had no idea. The door clicked shut behind him. I sank lower in my chair. Lisa popped her head in. "Sue, you get fired or are we celebrating with donuts?" I threw a pen at her. Unfortunately, not the expensive one. She dodged it easily, grinning like she lived for this drama. "I'm guessing no pink slip, then?" I groaned, rubbing my temples. He wasn't mad. He's just an intense. Understatement of the year. Killian's never mad, he's just intense. Understatement of the year. She smirked. I still can't believe he did the whole tuck your hair behind your ear thing. Classic alpha move. I rolled my eyes. It was barely anything. Lisa leaned forward, resting her chin on her hands. "Barely anything, huh? Is that why your face turned the color of my coffee cup?" I opened my mouth to argue, but the words died when a sharp twist rolled through my stomach. I froze. "Not again," Lisa noticed. "You okay?" I nodded quickly. "Yeah, just hungry." She gave me a suspicious look, but didn't push. I wasn't about to tell her the truth, because this wasn't just hunger. It had been happening for days. Waves of nausea, dizzy spells, and the sudden inability to look at scrambled eggs without gagging. I thought maybe it was stress, or Lisa's terrible homemade lunch from last week finally coming for revenge. But deep down, I knew better. I stared at my screen, pretending to focus. No way. This can't be happening. 2 hours later, I slipped out of the office and straight into the nearest pharmacy. I stood in front of the pregnancy tests like they were live explosives. The cashier glanced at me twice. I pretended I was comparing toothpaste. Eventually, I grabbed one and shoved it under a pack of gum. Real smooth. Back at my apartment, I paced the bathroom like a lunatic. 3 minutes felt like 3 years. When the timer went off, I forced myself to look. 2 pink lines. I stared, blinked, shook it. Still there. Oh, crap. I sank to the floor, the test dangling from my fingers. Pregnant. At least I thought. I moaned and shook my head. Perhaps my room was impossibly tiny, but after all, forget about it. I mentally replayed every life choice that led to this moment. I came up with one consistent name. Killian. Of course it was Killian. I let out a dry laugh. Classic Ray. I didn't sleep much that night. My brain wouldn't shut up. Was I seriously about to raise a kid while juggling work, office gossip, and an alpha boss who thought good job was high praise? I didn't even know if I'd tell him. The thought alone made me break into a cold sweat. No, I needed to figure things out first, one step at a time. The next day I walked into the office like nothing had happened. Lisa narrowed her eyes at me the second I sat down. "You're being weird," she said, squinting. "Weirder than usual," I shrugged. "Maybe I'm just glowing with success from fixing the firewall." She snorted. "Sure, that's it." Before she could grill me further, my email dinged. From Killian Voss. Subject, pack gathering. This weekend. I blinked. Lisa leaned over my shoulder. "Ooh, what's that?" I stared at the screen, heart thudding. Killian Voss did not casually invite people to pack gatherings. "Well," Lisa nudged me. "You going?" I stared at the message. "Guess I don't really have a choice," I muttered. Chapter 15. The Art of Not Throwing Up. I stared at the message. "Guess I don't really have a choice," I muttered. Lisa practically bounced in her chair. "Oh, you definitely don't. Pack gatherings are like wolf prom, but with more glaring and fewer corsages." I groaned. "Yeah, but no one actually expects me to show up." Lisa smirked. "Except Killian. And he's kind of hard to ignore." She wasn't wrong. Still, I didn't think, "Sorry, can't make it. Too busy figuring out how to be pregnant without dying of panic," was going to fly as an excuse. Saturday rolled around too fast. The gathering was at the Voss estate, basically a castle with Wi-Fi. It sat on the edge of the woods, where the pack usually held runs during full moons. Fancy wolves everywhere. I pulled up in my slightly rusted car, sticking out like a sore thumb between the sleek black SUVs in the driveway. Lisa, of course, ditched me the second we arrived. She was probably inside, charming some poor beta into fetching her a drink. I lingered near the snack table, chewing on a breadstick and avoiding eye contact. "Ray." I jumped, nearly choking. Killian stood beside me, looking way too good for someone casually hosting a pack event. Black shirt, sleeves rolled up, no tie. Just alpha energy everywhere. "Enjoying yourself?" he asked, sipping from a glass. I nodded, avoiding his eyes. "Oh yeah. Love standing alone near expensive cheese." His mouth twitched. "Well, someone's gotta do it." I forced a laugh, but the smell of smoked meats from the grill wafted by, and my stomach twisted in the worst way. "No, not now." I swallowed hard and set the breadstick down like it suddenly offended me. Killian's eyes narrowed. "You good?" "Totally," I lied, already scanning the room for the nearest bathroom. I smiled. probably too hard, then mumbled something about needing air and bolted. I barely made it to the bathroom. I leaned over the sink, gripping the edges, while I tried not to throw up everything I hadn't eaten. This was a disaster. I couldn't keep hiding it. Sooner or later, someone was going to catch on, especially Killian. I splashed cold water on my face, breathing slowly. "You're fine," I told my reflection. "Just one pack gathering. Then you can go home and panic in peace." I thought I was in the clear, until I walked out and ran straight into Killian. He raised an eyebrow. "Air's usually outside." I froze. "Oh, right." I took a detour. He crossed his arms, leaning casually against the wall. "You've been acting weird." "No, I haven't. You disappeared for 10 minutes. I like sinks." Killian stared at me for a long moment. "Ray," I swallowed. "Yeah? What's going on?" His voice softened, but his eyes didn't let up. I opened my mouth to brush it off, crack some joke, maybe, but nothing came out. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If something's wrong, just tell me." My stomach flipped again, but this time it wasn't from nausea. I met his gaze, heart hammering. I needed to get out of here before I said something stupid. "I'm fine," I mumbled, forcing a smile. "Really?" Killian didn't look convinced. As I hurried past him, I felt his eyes follow me all the way across the room. Killian didn't look convinced. As I hurried past him, I felt his eyes follow me all the way across the room. I tried not to trip over my own feet. I needed out, now. I slipped through the crowd, grabbed a soda off the drink table, and parked myself in the farthest corner I could find. The plan was simple: hide, survive the night, and vanish before Killian had time to ask more questions. Lisa appeared 10 minutes later, holding a tiny sandwich and grinning like she'd just won the lottery. "You hiding?" "No." She stared at me. I sighed. "Yes," Lisa smirked, popping the sandwich into her mouth. "He's still watching you, you know." I groaned. "Lisa, I can't do this. I almost threw up on a breadstick." "Romantic." "Exactly. I'm 2 seconds away from moving to another country. Maybe Canada." Lisa plopped down beside me. "You'd freeze up there. Better than sweating under Killian's interrogation." She snorted and took a bite of her sandwich. "So what's the plan, genius?" I hesitated, swirling the soda can in my hand. "I'm thinking resignation." Lisa stopped chewing. "Excuse me?" "I'll quit. Walk away before it gets complicated." Problem solved. Her eyes narrowed. "You're serious?" "Completely." I shrugged. "It's easier. I'll find another job. Maybe something chill, like data entry. Wolves don't need firewalls, right?" Lisa leaned back, staring at the ceiling like she was asking the moon for patience. "You know you're being dramatic, right? You prefer the term realistic. You're really gonna quit over this?" I opened my mouth to argue, but she held up a hand. "Nope, don't answer that. You're scared." I huffed. "I'm not scared." "You are so scared," she grinned. "You think if you run, the problem disappears." I stayed quiet, avoiding her eyes. Lisa leaned in. "What's really going on, Ray? And don't give me the everything's fine speech." I fiddled with the tab on the soda can. "I can't keep doing this. Every time Killian looks at me, I feel like I'm about to pass out, and I don't know how to explain the other stuff." Her head tilted. "Other stuff?" I waved vaguely. "Morning sickness, weird cravings, General existential crisis. Lisa blinked. Then her eyes widened. Wait. She pointed at me. You're pregnant. I hissed, slapping a hand over her mouth, and she swatted me away, laughing way too loudly. Oh my God, Ray! How long were you planning to keep that a secret? Forever, Lisa grinned. And you think quitting solves this? I shrugged. It delays it. Lisa shook her head, leaning back in her chair. You are so not ready to be a mom. I groaned, dropping my head onto the table. I know. She nudged me. Hey, you've got this. I really don't. Sure you do. Look at it this way. Killian's practically obsessed with you already. I mean, the guy brushed your hair back, Ray. That's peak romantic drama. Or maybe he was trying to check if I had crumbs in it. Lisa snorted. Doubt it. Pretty sure you could light his entire pack house on fire and he'd still think you're cute. I sat up, frowning. You realize none of this helps, right? She shrugged. I'm just saying, you quitting isn't the power move you think it is. It's not a power move, I muttered. It's called surviving. Lisa crossed her arms. You quitting won't stop him from finding out, Ray. He's an alpha. Alphas can smell stuff. Great. Maybe I'll start carrying air freshener everywhere. Lisa burst out laughing. I didn't. Later that night, I sat in my apartment, staring at my laptop screen. Subject: Resignation, Ray Westwood. The cursor blinked, waiting for me to finish the email. I typed 3 versions, deleted them all. I sighed and leaned back in my chair. Resigning felt easy, too easy, but I couldn't hit send. The email stayed in drafts, waiting. My phone buzzed next to me. You disappeared fast. Everything okay? I stared at the message. Oh, come on, I tossed my phone onto the couch like it was haunted. This man had sixth sense levels of awareness. I grabbed a pillow and screamed into it. The next morning I sat at my desk at Nova Systems, ignoring the unsent resignation email haunting me from the corner of my screen. Lisa leaned over from the next cubicle. Sue, hit send yet? I glanced at the email, then at her. Nope, she smirked. Called it. You're not going anywhere. I sighed. Not yet. Give it another week. Killian will probably sniff out the truth anyway. I glared at her. I really don't need that kind of encouragement. Too bad. You got it. Not yet. Too bad. You got it. She handed me a cup of coffee, smirking. Congrats, by the way, Lisa added, way too casually. For what? She grinned. Your future alpha baby. I groaned and dropped my head onto my desk. Chapter 16. Escape Plan Foiled. The resignation email still sat in my drafts, staring, judging. I glared back at it like sheer willpower could make the words disappear. It didn't. Lisa peeked over the divider, sipping her iced coffee with the subtlety of a bulldozer. Still there? Yep. You hitting send? I swiveled my chair just enough to look her dead in the eyes. If I was hitting send, do you think I'd still be sitting here? She grinned. Fair point. I sighed and sank further into my seat. I just need one good reason, one tiny excuse to hit that button, other than being pregnant with your alpha boss's baby. Lisa whispered dramatically, wagging her eyebrows. I threw a sticky note at her face. She caught it midair. Is this how you treat your emotional support friend? Yep, and I'm considering upgrading to throwing staplers. Lisa smirked and leaned closer over the cubicle wall. You know, deleting that email is the universe's way of telling you to stay. It's fate. It's procrastination, and you're not helping. Lisa tilted her head. I think I am. If you quit, who's going to make awkward eye contact with Killian across the office? That's like half the entertainment around here. Perfect. I shot her a look. I'm thrilled to know my personal crisis is fun for you. It is. You're like a walking soap opera, and I don't even need cable. By the time I reached the office kitchen, I'd officially given up. I leaned against the counter, waiting for the ancient coffee machine to do something that resembled brewing. Killian walked in, because of course he did. I pretended to examine the coffee pot like it held the meaning of life. Morning, he said, leaning against the counter next to me. I nodded, keeping my eyes locked on the machine. Morning. A heavy pause. Is it broken, or? Killian asked, tilting his head toward the silent machine. Oh no, it's just slow. I shrugged, kind of like me at staff meetings. He huffed a quiet laugh. I hadn't noticed. I glanced at him. His face was unreadable, calm, like always. But his eyes stayed on me longer than necessary. And suddenly, standing in that kitchen felt way too small. I cleared my throat. Well, I'd love to stay and chat about the thrilling world of office appliances, but I have important emails to ignore. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. Ray? I paused, gripping the coffee cup a little tighter. He hesitated, then took a step closer. You've been avoiding me. I forced a laugh. No, I haven't. I've been super available, very here, extremely present. Killian raised an eyebrow. You ran out of the pack gathering like it was on fire. I had stuff, soup, yet super busy. Another pause. Killian studied me, like he could see straight through the nothing to see here sign I was desperately holding up. I meant what I said before, he said quietly. I blinked. Huh? That you don't have to prove anything. His voice dropped, softer than I'd ever heard it. You belong here. My chest tightened. Killian, you can't just say stuff like that. Why not? Because I gestured vaguely at the space between us. Then it gets weird. I opened my mouth to argue, but he was right. It's already weird. I opened my mouth to argue, but he was right. It's already weird. I opened my mouth to argue, but I said, Are you okay? Yes, I said. I found myself unable to speak anymore. It was weird, the glances, the tension, the whole oops, I might be pregnant with your kid thing. I wasn't ready to unpack yet. I rubbed the back of my neck. I don't know what I'm doing half the time. Neither do I, he admitted. That caught me off guard. Killian Voss, future alpha, professional stoic, didn't know what he was doing? Huh? For a second, the room felt easier, like maybe I wasn't the only one hanging by a thread. I exhaled slowly, offering a small smile. Guess that makes two of us. Killian nodded. Guess so. I walked back to my desk feeling Lighter? Pencil? I stared at the screen. The resignation email stared back. I hovered my mouse over it, ready to hit send. Instead, I clicked delete. Lisa peeked over the divider again. You send it? Nope. She grinned. Knew it. I rolled my eyes. I don't want to talk about it. Oh, we're definitely talking about it. And just like that, my escape plan was dead. Later that afternoon, Killian passed by my desk. He didn't stop, didn't say anything, but his hand lightly brushed the back of my chair. I froze, pretending to type. Lisa's eyes practically popped out of her head. Did you see that? She yelled. It was a chair touch, Lisa, not a proposal. She fanned herself dramatically. Chair touches lead to proposals. That's Pack 101, I groaned. I'm blocking your number. Do it. I'll just send memos. I tried to focus on my work, but I could feel Killian's presence across the room. Calm. Steady. Like the world could catch fire and he'd still handle it with one hand in his pocket. Lisa leaned over again, whispering. So, wedding invite soon? I threw another sticky note at her.